love cheerleading. I started training when I was about 12, and then I made varsity my freshman year in high school. But I don't think I'll be cheering next year. My school has 2.5 miles of hallway, so that's why I'm in a wheelchair, because sometimes I have those bad days where I'm tired all the time and I can't walk that far. Oh, thank you. Oh, cool. Is this more to put on my wall? I'm not angry about it, because what if I can't make it better? Am I gonna be depressed and sad for the rest of my life about it? No. You're gonna have to move on and make do with the best you got.
Show me what you want. Oh, merry-go-round. It's hard because Jordan doesn't look disabled. And we have this problem of going out in the world with this child who appears to be a normal boy and then doing something really naughty and people yelling at him thinking that he's doing it on purpose. You know, when they're little cute guys, you don't worry about them in the same way. It's when they get to be big, potentially menacing-looking, sized people. So we worry about the future.
Say three. Say three.
Oh, good.
We just covered a fumble. They were about to score, and then got fumble, so that was good, yeah.
Everybody's been so supportive, but I think a lot of people don't know what to say, and then you have those moments where you're just like, this can't be real. This didn't happen to me. My baby didn't die.
We respect the atom bomb, but how many of us respect this? This dishful of disease-producing organisms, if allowed to grow unchecked, may be capable of more widespread loss of life than a dozen atom bombs. But scientists have found a strong defense: vaccines, which stimulate the formation of antibodies. Once formed, they may remain in the blood and confer immunity against another attack of the same disease.
I think we take vaccines for granted because we no longer appreciate the seriousness of the diseases that vaccines prevent, because vaccines in some way have been a victim of their own success. I was a physician here in 1991 when there was a massive measles outbreak. We had 7 children who came into this hospital that died of measles. I mean, died of a disease that was easily and safely prevented by a vaccine. And it's extremely hard to watch that happen. It breaks your heart. When diseases were common, vaccines were an easy sell. Now what you see is people who are saying, I don't see these diseases at all anymore, and maybe these vaccines aren't as safe as they're purported to be. But history teaches us how effective vaccines are. Of course, it's reasonable that parents would argue that vaccines be held to the absolute highest standard of safety. These vaccines should cause virtually no severe side effects, and that's really pretty much true. I mean, it's extremely rare that they would cause any problem, so.
I was taught in medical school that vaccines are safe and they're effective. I had no reason to believe otherwise. It wasn't until the New York State passing of the hepatitis B mandate in 1991. It struck me as kind of odd that they were mandating a vaccine for newborn babies when babies were not at risk for developing hepatitis B infection. It made me question whether or not we're doing a service to children by giving them all these vaccines and injections. There's more than just an assumption that vaccines are safe. It is pretty much regarded as law. But I don't think it's that black and white. There are many grays, and you have more and more people who are questioning it, and with good reason, because the science is not there to really state that vaccines are truly safe.
I'm so tired. Right after you guys left, I started having seizures. So, I'm really sore today. They're very sore today. My muscles are. I have received 3 Gardasil shots. After the shots, everything went crazy and I started getting sick. I've had 2 strokes. I have partial paralysis on the right side of my face. I have partial vision, and I'm having seizures.
Well, she started having problems early this week, and then Wednesday she had a really bad seizure, and then again on Thursday. So she's having an okay day today. She's just taking it easy. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chris. I'll tell her you called. Bye-bye. My thought of damage from a vaccine was a sore muscle, you know, a rash maybe. I would have never dreamt that this was a side effect of a vaccine. She doesn't talk about it with her friends, you know. She don't talk to anyone. And if I talk to her about it, she gets mad. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe she thinks that if we don't talk about it, it's gonna go away.
No, because you just cry.
It was MTV?
No.
CMT.
I don't know what it was.
Anyway, she saves this, and she says, Mom, you've got to see this. You've got to see this. And I said, okay, what? And I'm expecting to see some fashion show or whatever. And go ahead and show them.
Each year in the U.S., thousands of women learn they have cervical cancer. I could be one less.
Because now there's Gardasil, the only vaccine that may help protect.
I would sit there and watch like music videos or something, and every commercial they would come on. And I'm like, Mom, I don't want to like get cancer. And I'm like, Mom, I think I need to go get this. And
It got
but
crazy.
I wasn't gonna have sex anytime soon, and I was like, I'm gonna wait till I'm married. So it's kind of like I'm not gonna get it anyways. So I don't know what got through my head.
It got to her. It got to my 15-year-old child. They talked about it amongst themselves at school. Have you got that yet? You need to get that. Did you tell your mom about it?
I think we're the only country, other than perhaps New Zealand, that allows advertising on TV for pharmaceutical drugs. Our children, our population, we are bombarded with ads for Viagra, drugs to do this, drugs to do that. Do you have restless leg syndrome? You may have PAD and not know it. There's a drug that's right for you. Ask your doctor.
Ask your doctor about
This is unbelievable what we're doing, and we're doing the same thing with vaccines.
Gardasil.
Gardasil. Gardasil.
With Gardasil, you could be one less.
I have had so many young girls come up to me and say, I'm so happy, I'm one less. And I said, what do you mean you're one less? She says, I got Gardasil, so I'm one less cancer death. And I said, you know, if you got your pap smears, you would never have been a cancer death. The concept that our daughters are cancer deaths waiting to happen is just not accurate. Our death rate in the United States from cervical cancer is 3 per 100,000. They have a much higher chance of being a motor vehicle accident death than they do of being a cervical cancer death. Merck was so egregious in their advertising and so aggressive, even though very specifically true, nothing about their advertisement was false. It was false in its overall impressions.
This is South Florida's CBS 4 News. Dr. Diane Harper is one of the world's top experts on the human papillomavirus. In fact, she's one of the leading scientists the pharmaceutical industries turn to. Speaking out for the first time on television, she expresses concerns over what she considers a rush to vaccinate.
We don't know yet what's going to happen when millions of doses of the vaccine have been given.
Hey, it's Barbara Lowe Fisher with the National Vaccine Information Center. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about what happened to Brianna. I understand she received 4 vaccines.
She called me in tears. Mommy, I had a horrible headache all day long.
The National Vaccine Information Center was founded in 1982 by parents of vaccine-injured children to prevent vaccine injuries and deaths through public education and defend the informed consent ethic. We started out in the early 1980s working with Congress on the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, which President Reagan signed into law in 1986. Then what we did was we participated on the government advisory committees that were set up under that law. We've been critics, yes, but we've also had one foot inside the system to convince those that are in power that things need to change. And we feel this is woefully inadequate. This issue has become so polarized. You're either pro-vaccine or you're anti-vaccine. When you take a centrist position like the National Vaccine Information Center, you are automatically put into a category as being anti-vaccine. But the truth is that we're just trying to make vaccine policies and vaccines safer.
How come doctors, they look at me like I have 3 heads when you go to these appointments? And
Yes.
I'm like, is this the first time in your career you've heard about this?
Well, and that's what we've been trying to do for 26 years is at least confirm for parents they're not crazy, they are not imagining anything, they're not alone.
No.
And I didn't set out to be an activist. I wanted to be a writer, but my life took a very different turn when my son was injured by a vaccine. I witnessed his reaction after we'd come back from the doctor's office. It was very quiet in the house. So I went upstairs and I found Chris sitting in a rocking chair, looking straight ahead as if he couldn't see me in the doorway. And I called out his name again and I watched his eyes roll back in his head till I could see the whites of his eyes and his head fall to his shoulder. After that, he became a different child, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He had been this bright, precocious baby, speaking in full sentences by the age of 2. After that shot, we got the diagnosis that he was minimally brain damaged, and the recommendation was to put him in a self-contained classroom for the learning disabled. I became committed to reforming the mass vaccination system, and I worked for 30 years to make vaccine policies safer. In the 1980s, children were being asked to get 23 doses of 7 vaccines. In the last 3 decades, that number has grown to 69 doses of 16 vaccines. That's triple the numbers of doses of vaccines we gave our children in the early 1980s.
Has this been broken again?
Yeah, we're gonna get it fixed.
Yeah, the brushes are bad.
Lunch, I packed extra for after school snacks.
Okay.
You got something in your stomach today?
No, you don't need
Yeah.
a little
Okay.
normal.
Jordan is my older brother. He has autism. He acts like he's mean, but he's not. He just doesn't understand very well. I wish he could tell me what he thinks. I want to know, like, how he feels when something makes him angry or sad, like when something hurts him. But I know when he's happy. He has this wonderful smile on his face. He giggles a lot. He's really silly. I just wish we could communicate more often. But I got used to it, so.
Rates of autism are jumping,
an alarming 10 to 17% every year.
Every 20 minutes in this country, another child is diagnosed with autism.
The question is there an epidemic of autism? I think the answer to that question is probably no. In the mid-1990s, we really broadened the definition of autism to include autism spectrum disorder, Asperger's, as well as other things. And I think that brought a lot more children under the umbrella who weren't there before.
All you have to do is ask the guidance counselors, the teachers, the principals, and all of them across the board will tell you that we are seeing a rise in the number of children with disabilities. That is clear. The CDC states that 1 in 110 children have autism. But autism is just one piece of a bigger problem. The bigger issue is that 1 in 6 kids in this country has some form of neurodevelopmental disability.
50 years ago, children didn't even get type 2 diabetes. Now, it's an emerging epidemic, as are a long list of ailments which used to be rare and have now been mainstreamed. Things like asthma and autism and acid reflux and arthritis, allergies, adult acne, attention deficit disorder. And that's just the A's.
Vaccine safety is not just about autism. Autism is only one kind of brain and immune dysfunction that is associated with vaccination. Millions and millions of children now in America are chronically ill and disabled. And during this same time period, that the numbers of doses of vaccines have more than tripled that we're giving our children, we have seen this explosion of chronic disease and disability. And to take off the table the use of a pharmaceutical product like a vaccine as a potential cofactor in this explosion of chronic disease and disability among our children is irresponsible.
So about 10 years ago, a mother came up to me and said, "Hey, doc, did you know there's mercury in vaccines?" And I hadn't a clue. And so my question was, well, if mercury is in the vaccines, what else is in the vaccines? So I open up the package inserts, and I see mercury, and aluminum, and formaldehyde, and antibiotics, and then preservatives like polysorbate 80. So I asked the pediatric resident, I said, tell me, how does the body process those materials? She could not answer me. And no one in science can, because no one has looked.
You would think that the FDA would take each of those ingredients and study them in human infants to make sure that each of those ingredients are safe. Well, they haven't done that. They've never taken vaccine quantities of each of those ingredients and done any sort of safety testing to confirm that each one of those ingredients are safe.
So if you're not doing that kind of detailed analysis, and it's not that expensive to do, you simply can't make any statement about the safety of these compounds in the nervous system. But it's one of the fundamental pillars of medicine that vaccines have saved millions of people around the world and therefore can't be questioned. And I think, in my view, everything in science can be questioned. I'm a neuroscientist by training, and my studies are in the origin of neurological disease. I develop animal models of Parkinson's and Lou Gehrig's disease. Recently, we've been looking at aluminum, which is common to many vaccines. It's used as an adjuvant. That means helper. Without the aluminum, the vaccine basically does not provide any long-term protection. And so my research has looked at injectable aluminum and how it might impact the nervous system. The difference between injectable aluminum versus dietary aluminum is that aluminum that you eat is excreted fairly rapidly. Injectable aluminum, however, is meant to stick around. And that's precisely why it's there in the first place. That's what an adjuvant does. So we simply did the really simple experiment of taking the same stuff out of the vaccines, the aluminum hydroxide, and injecting it into mice, into the muscles, to see what would happen if we tried to mimic the vaccine schedule. We were quite surprised to see how rapidly the behavioral symptoms emerged. They showed not only behavioral deficits of motor function, but they ultimately showed cognitive deficits as well. And once we sacrificed the animals and started looking inside their brains and spinal cords, we found massive damage to motor neurons. And so we may be creating the conditions for Parkinson's disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's disease. Maybe not immediately, but maybe 20, 30, 40 years down the road. We had some concerns when we released the study that it might trigger a bit of a backlash. It actually triggered a lot of silence. Pharma and the regulatory agencies largely ignored it, which is a very safe position to take, because if they wanted to counter what I've said with my studies, they should have just reached into their file folder and come up with their own study and said, Dr. Shaw is simply wrong because we did this study and look what we found. And after, 4 years, they haven't done that.
As a student at South High School, Gabby is definitely someone that stood out. Bouncy, bubbly, joyful, all the time. Academically, she was an A student. She was very conscientious in everything she did. It's just heart-wrenching to see the change. I wish I could find a cure for her.
We're back.
Oh, you are.
I'm tired.
Cheerleading outfit. Yay.
Yeah.
You exerted yourself?
Yes.
When I first saw her, she was having problems with seizures, intractable headaches, chest pains, and I found out that she began having problems following her Gardasil vaccinations. Now you gotta check your memory out here. See, 3 things to remember. See if you remember orange, otter, and 473 Tomato Street. Let me try it.
Orange, Otter, 473 Otter Street.
Tomato.
Tomato Street.
Right.
I don't understand why. I don't remember anything. I used to be 4.0, but I don't know why I'm getting Fs now. So obviously there is some reason. And it's not because I'm stupid, because I'm not stupid at all. So I just don't understand.
Close your eyes tight. Don't let me open them.
My neurologist, he's ruled out everything, and he's sure that it's the Gardasil shot.
In my opinion, there's little room for doubt concerning that this condition was caused by the Gardasil. Every time she got another injection, she got worse and worse. I think Gardasil should be taken off the market. It hasn't been well tested before it was placed in the general public.
The FDA has a particular process that's called fast tracking when there is a promising drug that comes forward. Gardasil, they had scheduled a 4-year trial, but after 15 months, they went to the FDA and said, there is nothing like this vaccine on the market. Would you please consider this for fast track? And the FDA said yes. So within 6 months, they approved it. And as soon as they had it approved, Merck said, we will no longer continue our trial. We're going to stop our trial because our drug is now approved. So therefore, we don't know the long-term side effects. We do know there have been reports of pancreatitis, reports of autoimmune disease, reports of transverse myelitis, and reports of juvenile ALS, which is uniformly fatal in adolescents.
We are very committed to the safety of our products, and we do everything we can to monitor that and maximize that. We're reassured by the data we generated in the course of our studies, documenting the safety and tolerability of the vaccine.
Gabby is an example of why no vaccine, particularly a vaccine for children, should ever be fast-tracked by the FDA. Less than 1% of all cancer deaths are for cervical cancer. And yet we now have a vaccine that was only studied in 1,200 girls under the age of 16 before it was recommended for universal use by the CDC in all 11 and 12-year-old girls in this country. That's not science, that's politics.
Texas Governor Rick Perry has ordered that schoolgirls in his state must get the Gardasil shot. It's also worth pointing out that the AP says that Governor Perry has ties to Merck, including the fact that one of the company's lobbyists in the state of Texas is his former chief of staff.
Public health was never defined in the federal Constitution as a federal matter. Therefore, public health laws are state laws, vaccine laws are state laws. The way it works is the federal government recommends vaccines, the CDC, and the state governments mandate them. Different states have different exemptions. All states have medical exemptions. Every state but two has a religious exemption, and there are 18 states that have an exemption for philosophical conscientious belief.
So where is this rally?
In Trenton, in front of City Hall, I think. New Jersey just passed a little over a year ago a law stating that there were 4 more vaccines that are now going to be mandated for children to get into school. That's why we're having the rally, to raise the awareness that New Jersey's going overboard. It leads the country in numbers of mandates of vaccines for children to get into school. And I think parents are pissed, and I don't blame them for being pissed.
Yeah. Yeah. So would there
We are standing publicly for the legal right to follow our conscience when making educated vaccine decisions for our families. The only thing that we oppose is forced vaccination, violation of the informed consent principle. Informed consent means that you have full information about the benefits and risks of any medical intervention that can harm you, and that you have the ability to make a voluntary decision about whether or not you're going to accept that risk. If the state can force you to put your life on the line or your child's life on the line for any medical intervention, then the state has too much power.
The fact is, sadly, that some people don't do what's best for them or their children unless it's mandated. I mean, so for example, car seats save lives for children, but it's not until we really started to push that and make that a matter of law that people really started to use car seats for children. The problem is that, you know, we're a country that's founded on the notion of individual rights and freedoms. The term mandate, that you're forced to do anything, just feels wrong. I just wish we had a different word to use than mandate, something like good health requirement or something, because, you know, the term mandate just sits badly with us.
More than 2,000 Prince George's County students have not gotten their state-mandated shots. Tonight, an ultimatum to some of those parents: come to court, get the shots, or else.
More than 1,600 students and their parents have been ordered to appear in circuit court for the children to be immunized.
We can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, but it's going to have to get done.
I went over there and saw the parents lining up. They had police with dogs and guns patrolling the courthouse. I thought to myself, there is something wrong with this. We shouldn't be summoning parents under threat of imprisonment and fines because they didn't get their children a hepatitis B vaccination or a chickenpox vaccination. Hepatitis B is not polio, and chickenpox is not smallpox. But parents have been so conditioned to believe that every time a new vaccine comes out, that it's going to be mandated, that they haven't stood up and fought for the right to make these choices.
I deeply believe that vaccines are the best choice for almost all children. We don't have polio outbreaks in this country every summer anymore, and we don't have those because of immunization. It's a great accomplishment, but it's a fragile one.
We need to remember that there are a number of people who can't be protected by vaccination. There are children who are too young to be vaccinated but still susceptible. There are children whose immune systems are compromised, so they can't get vaccinated. That's the reason we want to get very high coverage, and it's a concept called herd or community immunity.
So in the concept of herd immunity, it's believed that when outbreaks occur, if enough people are vaccinated. The herd is sufficiently protected because the herd has been vaccinated.
So it's really an ethical decision whether you agree to be vaccinated. And in the US, we have essentially believed that for the community as a whole, for the social fabric, it is better to insist on vaccination than to allow free rein.
As with any medication, vaccine, or whatever, there are always some risks. And so what we're really looking at are the benefits provided by that new vaccine outweighing the risks.
So they are saying that some people ethically can be sacrificed for the greater good. But what they never bothered to find out, even if you accept that as a moral rationale, is how many were being sacrificed. 500? 5,000? 500,000? How many are being sacrificed?
Daddy's gonna get you. Come on, let's go. Let's go get dressed. Give me that binky.
Mr. Forrest, are you awake?
I am Stephanie Christner. I am, by training, a psychiatrist. I have an 8-year-old son and a 3-year-old son, and I have a daughter who died. When it comes to death with vaccines, I think there are 2 issues that are going on. One is you have an immediate reaction to a component in the vaccine, like an anaphylactic shock. Like if you eat peanuts and you're allergic to peanuts, you will die, your throat will close off. And there's things in vaccines that people are allergic to that they're not screened for, and that can happen immediately. But then there's also a delayed reaction. And that's something that takes place slowly over time due to chronic inflammation. And that's how my daughter died.
You're sure? Okay. So I'm gonna eat it.
It's been a tough year. My daughter's name was Victoria Grace Boyd Christner. She was born August 22nd, 2008. She was beautiful and perfect, and it kind of completed our circle. Now, you know, we'd had all these boys, and Stephanie now had her little girl, and it was awesome.
Hi, little Vic. It's your first Christmas.
She was so happy and awake and alert. Then she was vaccinated with all of the routine vaccinations at the age of 2 months and was never the same after that. Within that week, she became sick, more withdrawn, more irritable. She did not want to eat. And then sometime in there, she had an episode where she stopped breathing or had a seizure. I'm not sure what it was. And 911 actually comes out to our house, and she's fine by then. I just guess I was overreacting, and they looked at her, and everything seemed perfectly normal. They didn't run any tests on her, just it seemed absolutely not needed at the time. And that was probably December 15th, and then, of course, we go in December 23rd and give a whole nother round of vaccinations.
It was Valentine's weekend. Stephanie was going to go with her girlfriends out of town, so she lined up for our caretaker to watch the kids. Remember, I was eating breakfast about 10 o'clock, and I got a call, and the phone call was the husband of our caretaker, and he said, something's happened. Victoria stopped breathing. She's turning blue. When I pulled up to the house, there was emergency vehicles everywhere, and I knew then that something terrible had happened. And when I went in the house and saw her on the floor, lying on her back, and her arms stretched out, and she wasn't moving. Then I had to call Stephanie, and her friend answered the phone, and I said, "Can you put Stephanie on the phone? Victoria's died." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Victoria's died."
She just was gone. And have a child, and then I follow the rules, and I damage this child to the point that they die. That's hard for me to understand.
A lot of doctors try to convince their patients that vaccines are 100% safe and that parents have nothing at all to worry about. You don't even need to question the system. And I think doctors that tell their patients that kind of information aren't telling the truth. Just like anything in medicine, there's always the risk of a possible reaction. Well, I've been looking into vaccines for about the last 15 years, ever since I had to start researching the decision for my own kids. But back then, I couldn't find any really good information. And I felt pretty ill-equipped as a pediatrician to answer patients' questions. I was advised by a lot of colleagues not to write the book because they knew the mainstream medical organizations would view the book as anti-vaccine.
We're on call this morning with some harsh criticism of a popular best-selling book. It's called The Vaccine Book, Making the Right Decision for Your Child. An analysis in the journal Pediatrics says the book is flawed, misguided, and puts kids at significant risk of preventable diseases.
You know, it's a very pro-vaccine book, but I dare, to suggest that there might be a safer way to vaccinate. Anytime I have a patient who is delaying vaccines, I certainly like to make sure that they're aware of what the disease risk is. What are some of your... From the mainstream medical viewpoint, there's no issue. Patients should just comply with the vaccine schedule, don't ask questions, and get the schedule as is. But I feel that patients nowadays really want to be educated themselves.
I would prefer not to vaccinate, but I am going to do a select few of the vaccinations. And
there are a lot of patients out there that I feel were not vaccinating their children because they weren't offered an alternative. Right, go and lay her down. I see a lot of parents leave their pediatrician's office unvaccinated because they're not willing to get so many shots at once. And so I came out with a schedule that allows parents to get their children fully vaccinated, but we spread it out a little bit and we slow it down a little bit. If you're curious how...
There certainly are many parents now that are choosing to delay or withhold or separate vaccines. Pediatricians are faced with this all the time. As a physician, that's hard to watch. It's just very hard to watch people make a choice that's so ill-conceived, so poorly founded.
There has to be some trust involved. Trust in the physician who is proposing the vaccination, trust in the system that's developed the vaccine.
But try and sell that message in the 21st century. Trust me, I'm an expert. It doesn't work. I mean, we talk about wanting to empower parents so that they can make choices for their children that are the best choices, and that all appears to be a very logical, reasoned, empathetic thing to do. But the question is, are parents really in the best position to look at those data dispassionately and make the right decision? I don't think often they have that expertise. But that's just a very unpopular thing that I thought I'd say.
Americans are well aware that a number of prescription drugs that have been licensed as safe have been found to be unsafe after they're used by millions of people. And yet, when it comes to vaccines, which are mandated by law, there's somehow this separation made. The vaccines couldn't possibly be the same.
The majority of vaccine research is paid for by the vaccine manufacturers themselves. So the people who are approving the vaccines are taking the word of the pharmaceutical companies.
The pharmaceutical companies have been allowed to be too present at the table at the FDA and the CDC. And I think a firewall needs to be built between those in government who are regulating, making policy for, and developing vaccines, and those pharmaceutical companies that are making profit off the sale of vaccines.
You know, it's no wonder parents are asking questions. It's because doctors that are making these policies are financially benefiting from these policies. The ACIP is the organization that approves vaccine policy for the United States. You have some doctors on that board that have a direct financial interest in these vaccines. That's a huge conflict of interest.
I think the conflict of interest issue hurts us. I mean, we see anything that has a financial side to it as evil. But these groups are made of people that are parents, that are giving these same vaccines to their children, that are closest to the data and know these data and are still giving these vaccines to their children. I'm not naive. I mean, I think pharmaceutical companies have done things that are aggressive or unethical or even arguably illegal. I don't see any of that on the vaccine side.
Hey, bud. Thanks a lot. Yeah, you too. As a baby, Jordan was just a typical baby. He met his milestones and was ahead of the curve on a few of them. Very social, had great eye contact. You know, everybody just said what a great little guy he was. And we just noticed over a period of a few months that he no longer spoke. He started walking on his toes all the time and flapping his hands when he would get excited or overstimulated. That's one of the first pictures
Yeah,
where you can see something's wrong.
Eyes
And
aren't
that
as
one,
lively.
I can't explain it, but it's just like the sparkle's gone.
Yeah.
He looked sad all the time. I ended up taking him to my pediatrician. She just said, oh, he's autistic. That's how it goes sometimes. You know, they're born that way. But we felt like there was something medically going on with him. So we took him to this doctor, and he said, the first thing I want to do is check him for heavy metals. I looked at those results, and the mercury was off the end of the page. I sort of freaked out. I thought, he's mercury poisoned. Where did that mercury come from?
When we tested the paint, we tested the air. I had the sawdust in my basement shop tested to see, is there mercury in that? When we talked to Dr. Green about it, told him what we were doing, he said, you don't have to look for where the mercury is coming from. We know where it's coming from. It's in the vaccines that Jordan's been getting.
Come on in, guys.
Since I began practicing in 1975, I saw one child with autism in the 80s, one child with autism in the early 90s, and then in the late 90s, I was literally flooded with patients. I've evaluated and treated now approximately 2,100 patients with autism.
It's been a while.
How you doing?
Oh, we're doing good. He's just got more of a mind of his own now. You know, he's just not a little boy anymore.
How does he get his needs met? How is he at getting more complicated things?
Well, he's getting clever. When he wants to eat a hot meal, he'll bring me a spatula and a hot pad. He'll go in the kitchen.
Jordan received mercury far exceeding EPA safety guidelines. We know that mercury causes neurotoxicity. There's no controversy about that. Does it cause autism? It contributes to the damages that lead to autism. Jordan was not born with autism. He was a normal child. He was injured by vaccinations, and the injuries led to his autism.
Certainly, this is a controversial point in the medical field because the conventional medical community has basically stated that there is no link between mercury and autism.
The science has been very clear on this. We have 6 studies that show mercury-containing vaccines don't cause autism. And although there can be slight flaws, I think, in any of those studies, once you have negative study after negative study after negative study, I think you can say with comfort that a truth has emerged.
Almost all vaccine studies are epidemiological studies, which means that large groups of people are compared to each other. There has been very little bench science that is looking at what happens at the molecular and cellular level in the body. We really need to do both kind of studies in order to understand what really happens.
The research is incomplete, and the certainty that's foisted on us by vaccine authorities is not scientific.
Since 1999, the amount of mercury has been reduced in vaccinations, but thimerosal is still present in some vaccines. And it's pretty clear from the scientific evidence that any form of mercury in the body is toxic and it can cause damage.
Okay.
You ready to split? You ready to bust?
Yeah, it was a long day here, I know. We're still hoping that he can learn to articulate a few words because I think he's becoming aware that he can't talk. Yeah. I think that's finally frustrated him. He's everybody around him, and sometimes he'll get up in my mouth and just watch me talk and just like, how do you do that? You know, it's just...
The bottom line is there are great differences between children. We make assumptions that every child has a similar level of tolerance, which is clearly not the case. There's studies looking at children's hair for mercury, showing autistic children excreting much less mercury compared to other children. Clearly, there's some inability to get rid of the toxics, so they're more susceptible.
Where the research is going on this is to try to identify which children have some sort of genetic risk or some sort of predisposition to having a severe vaccine reaction.
The vaccine program, it's one size fits all. Every child is the same. Every child needs to be vaccinated regardless of their family history or their medical background. What we don't know is what is sitting in their genetics that's potentially going to express itself or not express itself for a child to develop certain chronic illnesses.
Yeah, Daniel, hold on a second. Let Forrest say his Bible verse. Give your Bible verse for us. God's way is perfect. Now, there's something about his words not being flawed in there in the second line.
My oldest child has learning disabilities, asthma, numerous food allergies.
Word of God.
My youngest son has a significant speech delay. When you look back through their medical records, they are all absolutely perfectly healthy until the day they are vaccinated, and then it is like clockwork. Every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, we are at the doctor, runny nose, ear infection, asthma, respiratory problems.
This way.
When I vaccinated any of my children, my doctor did not give me the vaccine information safety sheets that by law you're required to give. Every pediatrician should ask about adverse reactions in other children and other family members and family history. And none of that was done.
I talked to the doctor last night. They can't sedate you. You're gonna be awake during the spinal tap. They have to do it. Seriously.
April Fools.
No, I'm serious. It's a heart attack. And I wasn't gonna say nothing because I didn't want you to freak out about it, but...
They're gonna stick a 9-inch needle in my back.
Quit stressing out.
I saw Baby Mama, and they're like, ah!
It's a movie.
I'm licensed to wed, and...
Gabrielle, I'm telling you, those are movies. They make the needles huge for that purpose. It's not that big. It's big, but it's not that big.
They diagnosed me with vasculitis. Vasculitis is a disease that causes problems with the blood flow. It can cause me to have strokes and seizures because your oxygen levels aren't able to get from your brain to the rest of your body. Dr. Lindholm, he likes to tell me, I'm not gonna let you die. He tells me that all the time. And so I'm like, okay, Dr. Lindholm. I've been homebound for 2.5 months. It's like, I go to school at home, and sometimes I get lonely because my friends will be out doing everything or hanging out with their friends, but I think that a positive attitude has a lot to do with it. So I'm trying to stay positive.
Since the vaccine has been licensed, there have been more than 18,000 serious adverse event reports made to VAERS. What's the government's response been to all of this? Their response has been to issue a report that says all of these reactions and adverse events and deaths are a coincidence.
So when a child goes for the next vaccine, there's no reason for the parent to think that the prior reaction was in any way related to the vaccinations. So they're going to get the vaccines again.
People can report a potential problem that they might have noticed to the CDC, but these reports do not in and of themselves speak to any association between a given adverse experience and a given vaccine, because, you know, lots of things could be causing the problems that are reported to the VAERS system and have nothing to do with the vaccine.
That you got a vaccine and that then you develop symptoms doesn't necessarily mean that the vaccine caused the symptoms. There is no evidence that HPV vaccine causes any of the serious side effects that it has been alleged to cause. It's a beautiful vaccine. It's safe, effective. It doesn't matter what people say. It really doesn't matter what people's opinions are. All you have to do is look at the data, and the data, I think, will tell you, you know, how one should approach a problem.
Your sophomore candidates, Gabby Swank. Gabby's having an issue with regards to the vaccines, and I want you guys to stand up and give Gabby Swank a 212 Titan cheer to get better.
It's all right, come out and let's see it. Next. It's pretty. It's very pretty. That, no, I'm sorry. That's where I draw the line. You are not wearing that. It makes you look short. That's not your dress.
Oh, I like it.
Why don't we put lots of soft, like loose curls so it's not tight, kinky curls?
I love this. Thank you so much.
Gabby, you okay?
No, my back hurts so bad. Don't touch me.
Yeah, she's in the middle of a seizure.
No, I'm not.
Yes, she is. She's clenching her jaw.
Now I feel kind of nauseated. Can we tell him to get out of the bathroom for a second?
Tessa, Monica, I need you to get out of the bathroom.
All right.
Come on. It's all right. It's all right. I got you. Go.
My hair is all messed up
Don't
now.
worry about your hair. I'll fix your hair. Kara, it's Shannon. Gabby's not gonna get to come. We're getting ready to go to the emergency room.
I have the worst luck in the world.
Honey, it's okay. Everything happens for a reason. I know that doesn't make you feel better right now.
No, it doesn't.
Honey, but having bad luck doesn't make you feel better either, does
Yes, it does.
Okay, so you have bad luck. How's that? We're gonna hit every stupid red light now.
See, I told you I had bad luck.
Honey, you don't have bad luck. No, she was puking, and I just didn't want to puke in the parking lot. Sorry. We were a little shocked to find out that she had kidney stones. The Topamax that she's taking to control her seizures has led her to now have kidney stones, and they will have to go in and surgically remove. When they finally got her to her room, she said she was really sad that I went from being a princess to look where I'm at now. It's amazing how things can change so quickly.
Okay, what do you want next? Where should go here? What do you think? Can we just do that right there? I would say that Jordan acts like your average, maybe 3 or 4-year-old. It's kind of like having a toddler for 11 years. People will email me and they'll say, it's such a blessing to have a child with autism. You know, we're so lucky. We learn so much from our son. He's an angel. You know, he isn't corrupted by the world. I just want to kill those people because Having a kid with autism is really hard, and it's not what the kid would have wanted for himself. It obviously makes you stronger and tougher, but it's not a blessing. It's pretty hard.
I'm so grateful that we're here together, and we need to unite across all of the different ways.
Almost 8 years ago, I think, we were at an autism rally, and we started talking to other people, and everybody had the same story about the mercury toxicity. And this one parent, George Mead, decided to go ahead with this class action, and we decided to join him in that. Jordan and William Mead were two of the test cases that were chosen to represent the lawsuit. The first thing that we learned is you can't sue the drug company that made the vaccine. Our lawyer explained to us how there was this court set up specifically to address all the vaccine injuries.
There were a lot of civil lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers, and there were some extraordinary awards because there were very devastating injuries. So the vaccine manufacturer said, this isn't profitable for us, we're not going to make vaccines anymore. So Congress stepped in and said, okay, we're going to stop lawsuits against manufacturers. You're not allowed to sue them unless you first go through this new program that we're setting up called the Vaccine Compensation Program, or the Vaccine Court.
The way the money comes into the fund is every time a vaccine is given in this country, there's a tax on it. So when you take your child in, you pay the 75-cent tax, that goes into the fund.
To date, there's been about $2 billion that has been paid out, and there's about $3 billion left. We face a future where presumably you could have 30, 40, 50 different vaccines recommended for universal use and mandated, and absolutely no accountability. You have a prescription for disaster when you don't have anybody accountable in a court of law for what happens when vaccines go wrong.
It just amazes me, what the government does to protect the integrity of vaccines. It can be anything but the vaccine. They feel as though their job is to keep immunization rates up. And if you legitimize vaccine claims, then you're saying, yeah, there are vaccine injuries, and they can never say that.
Is this a conspiracy?
No. Does it raise concerns? Is it difficult? Yes, but a conspiracy? Kevin?
Yeah, I think it's a conspiracy. I definitely think it's a conspiracy. But this is not a conspiracy to do a crime. This is a conspiracy to do good, and the goal is to keep immunization rates up so these dreaded diseases don't come back. And that is certainly well-meaning. It's well-meaning, profitable for the pharmaceuticals, but well-meaning, and certainly our government.
The government, they're good people in the government. They're trying to protect society, which is their job. But you sometimes wonder, if these motivations, don't interfere with, safety issues.
Welby says, be well. Be well, be well, be well, be Welby. Urge your family, friends, and neighbors to take the new oral polio vaccine. The new oral polio vaccine tastes good, works fast, and prevents polio. So to protect...
We're taught in medical school that vaccines reduce the incidence rate of smallpox or polio. One of the things that's missing in medical education is that they're not the only thing that play a role as to whether or not diseases come and go. Today, what I'd like to talk about is the rationale of vaccines. There was an article in Pediatrics Journal, which is the Bible journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and this article looked at child mortality rates by age at death in the United States between 1900 and 1998. And you see all the death rates of these diseases actually came down before the DPT was licensed in 1949. And the measles vaccine was introduced in 1963. So what is it that actually helped? State and local health departments implemented public health measures and public education about hygienic practices. Thus, vaccination does not account for the impressive declines in mortality seen in the first half of the century. It doesn't say that vaccines don't work. It just says that there's more information to actually understand that vaccines may not be responsible for the things that we're taught that they are responsible for. So just another... I've had numerous conversations with physicians regarding the subject of vaccines, and it is pretty clear that we in the medical profession are devoted to helping to save lives. Unfortunately, a pediatrician will often not recognize a reaction to a vaccine because they're not taught that. It's not within the training.
I never learned in medical school how vaccines were studied, what type of clinical trials they went through, how they evaluated adverse reactions, how they even evaluated effectiveness. So after Victoria died, I started reading everything that is put out there. Anything that would lead me to a topic, then I would Google that topic, and if there were textbooks in relation to that topic, I would order them, and then based on reading that book, I would order another book. What I have learned has shocked me. There has been information out there since the smallpox vaccine was created, linking vaccinations to encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain, which can cause death or permanent neurological disability. I've learned recently the placebo in a vaccine trial can actually be the aluminum or the mercury or another vaccine. I would assume the placebo was normal saline, which would be like water, something not harmful. In accredited, peer-reviewed medical literature, they have linked vaccinations to chronic autoimmune problems. The science is out there. People are just choosing not to look at it.
There is some published research showing dangers of vaccinations. Why isn't it getting into the mainstream media? Because of fear.
The Centers for Disease Control says a measles outbreak has sickened more than 100 people in 15 states. Health officials say that most of the victims were not vaccinated, and
It's very interesting when you look at how the government wants to publicize every case of measles that happens so that people will kind of have the misconception that measles is on the rise. The reality is measles has gone up a little bit. We're having about 140 to 150 cases each year nowadays, whereas we used to only have about 100. I don't think it's worth the publicity that the government is giving us over it.
A total of 130...
Measles can be a very serious disease. Children often with measles will get fevers of 103, 105 degrees, ear infections, pneumonia, encephalitis or brain inflammation, and even death. I sort of get discouraged at times. I hope we don't have to have a massive outbreak of measles to reinvigorate our immunization efforts.
This is Midodrine, a heart medication, I'm sure. Oxycodone, the devil's pill, that makes you feel terrible. Methotrexate, famotidine, phenytoin sodium, prednisone, Keppra, oxycarbazepine for trileptal, hydroxychloroquine. Queen.
She's taking almost 40 pills a day now.
I thought it was 30.
No, we increased, remember?
No.
We increased the Keppra and we increased the trileptal, both. We are probably spending almost $2,000 a month, and that's with our insurance. And it doesn't seem like it's getting, any better. She's starting to complain of chest pains and blood pressure problems, and the seizures are uncontrollable now. We just focus on today and pray for tomorrow. I actually haven't been here since we left. Being here just reminds me of how much we've had to give up. This was our house, regardless of whether or not it was great or, wonderful. This was home. We were forced to choose between the house and the repairs and Gabby's medical bills and her medicines and, we probably are sitting at probably close to $100,000 in unpaid medical bills. Financially, we've just become ruined. Derek and I are getting a divorce. And, like most families and our marriages, we had problems prior to Gabby getting sick. But the last 2 years of our lives has put so much more added stress on our marriage that he can't do it anymore. He said he was sorry, but he just can't. He can't do it.
Since the licensure of Gardasil, it has become one of the most widely used vaccines in the United States, and the Food and Drug Administration and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are recommending the use of that vaccine for all females between the ages of 11 and 26, with the opportunity to reach 9-year-old females if that is felt to be recommended by that individual's physician.
What if these shots that are supposed to protect kids against disease actually hurt your child? Joining me, Barbara Lowe Fisher.
I do not do as much media as I did in the 1980s and 1990s. I think there's been a concerted effort in the last decade to demonize advocates like myself.
Anti-vaccination bullshit.
In the 21st century, it has been much harder to get the other side of the vaccine story out by a media that's increasingly only covering one side of it.
Tonight on Frontline, Frontline reports on the science and politics of the bitter vaccine war.
I spent half a day with a reporter who I felt was well-meaning from Frontline. We gave a long interview. 3 of my prestigious colleagues, academics, scientists, also gave interviews discussing our concerns about vaccinations. Not a word of any of our interviews appeared in the PBS Frontline story. Instead of a scientific discussion presenting the facts, hysterical moms are presented against white coat, Ivy League academics. I'm sick and tired of this. I see children injured every day, disasters in families from vaccination injuries.
I can't even watch them anymore, really, as anything other than kind of a PR machine. I wish that they would stop saying that we're anti-vaccine. I think that that's just a way of labeling us that makes it easy for people to dismiss us. The shows are all about, do you vaccinate or not? There's no middle ground. There's no thoughtful, let's rethink how we do this. It's like black and white. Either we have to do it the way we've been doing it, or you don't do it at all.
A landmark court ruling doesn't mince words. Vaccines do not cause autism. The theory of vaccine-related causation, the court ruled, is scientifically unsupportable. This is a case in which the evidence is so...
It was a case unlike any other. It was very, very public, and the news media was very much involved, and because of all the publicity, the fear on behalf of the government was great that vaccines were going to be considered unsafe.
The government's lawyers were treating our whole side as if we ignore science and we were not rational people. But the only people I know of who have received awards left the word autism out of the equation, anything but the A word. Somehow this autism vaccine thing became so political and so, explosive. I just want everybody to lay down their arms and let's figure out what is making them so sick.
Autism has been interesting in that it's been a tale of shifting hypotheses. In the late 1990s was born the notion that MMR vaccine caused autism. Then a few years later, that hypothesis kind of morphed to it's thimerosal, this ethyl mercury-containing preservative in vaccines. Now we're kind of at hypothesis 3, the notion that children are just receiving too many vaccines too soon. All those contentions, I think, have been clearly disproved by scientific studies. Yet still the media carries the story because they're interesting, not because they're right.
In the last decade, the conversation has shifted from one looking at the broad issues concerned with vaccine safety and vaccine policies to focusing on autism. And I believe it was an error that has had serious consequences. The truth is, it's become very easy to dismiss the entire vaccine safety issue by focusing on autism and vaccines.
The debate is not over, and the need remains to evaluate all the components of vaccines and their safety or lack of safety. Our children today have elevated levels of many neurotoxins in their blood. Plastics derivatives, petrochemicals, pesticides, PCBs. Our tanks are nearly full. Our capacity to detoxify all these substances is very limited.
For sure, there are certainly thousands of molecules, mostly man-made, that have been introduced into the environment over the years, and many of these have the potential to be neurotoxic. So the idea that we live in a toxic soup and that vaccines add to that toxic soup, I think is a very valid concept, but the research hasn't been done.
Jack, I'm going to take your shoes off. Is that okay?
Is that okay?
When I trained in the 1980s, one of the things that my mentors taught me was always listen to the mother. The mother knows the child. And I see a lot of children whose parents come to me knowing that the child was damaged by vaccines.
Now, that's anecdotal. There's no study there.
And so we need to do a proper scientific study, comparing the health outcomes of children who are vaccinated to health outcomes of children who are not vaccinated.
And until we have that placebo-controlled, unvaccinated group compared to a large vaccinated group, there's always going to be doubt in parents' minds.
It seems like we ought to be able to do that. But the fact of the matter is, it would be pretty hard to find those 50,000 unvaccinated children to do the study.
Where should we be putting our healthcare dollars? We have a number of infectious diseases that are still a plague, if you will, on our society. Perhaps we should put those dollars in developing the next generation vaccines.
I'm Barbara Lowe Fisher, and I want to welcome you to the 4th International Public Conference on Vaccination. The theme of this conference is Show Us the Science and Give Us the Choice.
Morning, this is Shannon. This is Shannon.
She told me yesterday to start taking her off the meds. She said, I'm dying, and I know that, and these aren't helping, and we can't afford it. So, Mom, just take me off the medicine and let me die.
That's awful. I would like to introduce you to a very special mom. Shannon has come here from Kansas. We had wanted Gabrielle to come. Gabrielle is too sick to come. But Gabrielle wanted to create a statement, a video.
About 2 years ago, Gardasil, the vaccine, completely changed my life. I can't drive, and I've been looking forward to it since I was 12. And I can't go to the bowling alley like all my friends do because of the strobe lights, because of the seizures. I would do anything to get my life back to normal. I don't like being that girl that everybody's like, oh, she can't go to do this or she can't go do this because she's sick. It's just changed my life in so many ways. And I don't want any other girl have to go through this.
That is our story. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm a mother. I was not given the information that I needed to make an informed choice for her. The message I leave here with anything today is make sure that you are educated or you educate those around you. Thank you very much.
I would rather my daughter got cervical cancer. See what she's going through now. It's not worth it.
I truly like your sign that says, show us the science and give us the choice, because what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is show you the science. I'm going to try. I believe that we certainly need to change the way our system is. Our system is not working well now. I think it's entirely plausible that we can have the information, we can design the databases, we can design the long-term follow-up, but it becomes a matter of political priority and a matter of financial priority.
Where are you? Yes.
Here, son. Yeah, let me get the water. We chose this site, and it's a beautiful setting. Victoria is laid to rest right above Mom and Joe.
I never got to see her.
Yeah, that's Victoria's place, yeah.
I feel at this point betrayed by our medical system. They do not even acknowledge that there is a problem. And if they do not acknowledge something, they cannot change it.
We'll put some water in there, that's right. Then Forrest will put the flowers in. There's no doubt in our mind that had we not vaccinated our daughter, she would be here today. And I believe that from the bottom of my heart. We're not zealots. We're not some people that are looking for a conspiracy or a fighter on every corner. But you can no longer ignore these statistics. It's beyond me to think why all these vaccines are necessary. I understand where they started from, and I think a lot of good has been done initially, but I think it's really time for us to relook at the policy and what we're putting in these children.
Overall, the one feeling I have is a low-level, constant anxiety. You have to constantly monitor what other people think about what's going on. Sometimes I almost want to wear a T-shirt saying, I have autism, I can't talk, or something like that.
There have been several instances here in Portland with autistic teenagers and adults getting tasered by police. The police will yell at you to stop or turn around because you're acting weird so that they think you're on drugs. We're not spring chickens. He's obviously going to outlive us. We're hoping that by the time he's an adult, there's some kind of group home that evolves, because those kids are coming down the pike. About 10 years from now, you know, there's going to be a lot of autistic people out there walking the streets.
I just want to let you know that what we're going to do is send one message up there, and that is that we want the safety mechanism separated out from the same people who are doing policymaking. So you don't want the fox guarding the chicken coop. Congress should be providing strong oversight on vaccine development, policymaking, and regulation in this country, and they're not. Until we have money that is committed to independent research by investigators who do not have ideological or financial conflicts of interest with either government or industry, we're not going to get the kind of science we need. It is absolutely essential that we find out, before we add one more vaccine to the mandatory vaccination schedule, whether or not these vaccines are safe.